It was the fact that I was made to go on a diet based on my BMI that has completely ruined my relationship with food, my mental health, and my body.
BMI. We are going to be deconstructing why BMI is basically bullshit. Before I begin this video, I just want to add a trigger warning that I will be using the word obese in this video. I generally don't like to use it as I do find it to be very triggering to people, but because of the nature of this video, I do need to use the word quite a few times, so just a warning before you watch this video. So first, we're going to go through the history of BMI. Body mass index, BMI, is a formula developed in 1832 by a Belgian mathematician and astrologer, Adolphe Quetelet, whereby you divide a person's weight by the square of their height. Quetelet was not concerned with weight loss or health, but was trying to test whether mathematical laws of probability could be applied to humans. To test his ideas, he collated information from French and Scottish army conscripts, white male participants, including their weights and heights, and plotted them along a distribution. Since the average person's weight was proportional to his height, he reasoned that this must be what the ideal weight should be, and therefore anyone that deviated from this average was considered under or overweight. So this pseudo-scientific conception of an ideal weight thus provided the first scientific notion of what overweight could be. So basically our hashtag health is decided on a formula that an astronomer did in 1832 on male army conscripts. Cool. Note that averages measure entire populations and don't often apply to individuals. BMI was in fact never intended to be used at the individual level. Quetelet was simply trying to classify the population and not make any predictions about death or disease. However, in the 1940s, insurance companies were trying to predict who might die earlier and thus be a greater policy risk, and they found Quetelet's formula. Insurance companies used BMI as a criteria for profit and measurement, not as a true indicator of health. BMI spread from insurers to health researchers, and finally in the 1980s, BMI entered the clinical realm, where obesity, excess adipose tissue, has been primarily diagnosed using the BMI. Today, BMI is one of the most commonly used measures of health. Doctors typically use BMI to advise their patients. If you're below 18.5, you're underweight. 18.5 to 24.9 is normal. 25 to 29.9 is overweight, and 30 plus is obese. So now that I've kind of explained BMI, like where it came from and how we came to be using it today, I want to explain what the 4 main problems are with using BMI to diagnose health. So I'm going to be going into these for you today. Number 1, BMI is biased against women. We established earlier that the BMI formula was established using data from men. The problems with this are, the same BMI formula is applied to both men and women, despite the fact that because men are taller on average, the formula automatically gives them a lower BMI. BMI is a ratio of weight to height squared. So the taller one is, the lower one's relative BMI will be. Women store more fat efficiently than men, despite eating proportionally fewer calories. On average, women have 6 to 11% more body fat than men. Studies show that the female sex hormone estrogen reduces a woman's ability to burn energy after eating, resulting in more fat being stored around the body. The likely reason is to prime women for their role in childbearing, pregnancy, and nursing. The relationships in weight and mortality is much different between men and women. Heavier women have far lower mortality rates than heavier men. So then given this information, you think it would be appropriate to use different formulas for men and women, right? But no, the way BMI defines being overweight and obese is biased against women. So number 2, BMI is not a measure of body fat. It's only a measurement of proportionate body weight. BMI cannot measure or take into consideration things like muscle mass, body fat percentage, or where and how your body stores fat. It makes no allowances for the possible proportions of muscle, bone, or fat stored in the body. But bone is denser than muscle and twice as dense as fat. So a person with strong bones, muscle tone, and low body fat will have a high BMI. Thus, athletes tend to find themselves classified as either overweight or obese. BMI doesn't account for the presence of what's called visceral fat. This sits deeper under your skin and surrounds internal organs. Unlike subcutaneous fat, often referred to as white fat, which tends to settle around the hips and thighs, visceral fat tends to increase your waist circumference. Number 3, BMI criteria are arbitrary and heavily influenced by the pharmaceutical and diet industries. We have no clear points on the BMI scale of what should be classified as overweight and what should be classified as obese. For example, between 1980 and 2000, the US dietary guidelines had overweight at various levels ranging from a BMI of 24.9 to 27.1. In 1995, the World Health Organization came out with a recommendation that said BMI for overweight should sit at 25 to 29, and a BMI over 30 should be considered obese. This is where it gets a little bit shady. The WHO guidelines were written and drafted in part by the International Obesity Task Force, whose 2 principal founders were companies making weight loss drugs. Hoffmann La Roche, the maker of the weight loss drug Xenical, and Abbott Laboratories, the makers of the weight loss drug Mircea. Note, Mircea was rejected by the FDA in 2010 after 13 years on the market, as it raises the risk of heart attack and stroke, but offers little benefit. The IOTF's campaign to lower the standard of what is considered overweight directly coincides with the economic interests of the diet and pharma industries. By lowering the BMI standard and therefore making more people think they are overweight, the pharma industry can create a much larger market for its diet plans and weight loss drugs. So the effort to establish a worldwide standard for what is considered overweight and obese was sponsored by those companies making weight loss drugs. Like, it's actually insane. In 1998, the NIH lowered the overweight BMI threshold. So it went from 27.8, 27.3 to 25, in line with the WHO recommendations, branding roughly 29 to 37 million Americans as overweight overnight. For obesity researchers, this meant they could add 40 million people to the population at risk. By doing this conflates the importance of their own message, which means more funding. For government agencies such as the CDC and the NIH, this gives them a reason for expanding their own mission and increasing their budget requests. For both groups, it provides a rationale for expanding their power. Number 4, BMI was never intended to gauge somebody's health. It is in fact a poor measure of disease and mortality. One of the studies to prove how imperfect BMI is as a measure of health was published in 2008 in JAMA Internal Medicine, in which researchers found that BMI didn't always correlate with other measures of health. Results showed that although BMI was correlated with metabolic health, there were exceptions. Among women, 78.9% of those with normal BMIs, 57% of those with overweight BMIs, and 35.4% of those with obese BMIs was metabolically healthy. Another study published in the International Journal of Obesity in 2016 found similar results. Here, researchers included data from more than 40,000 participants, and they found that 47% of overweight people, 29% of people considered obese, and 15% of people who were considered very obese were actually metabolically healthy. So let's just say that again. Nearly half of overweight people are considered metabolically healthy. Conversely, more than 30% of those in the normal weight range were considered cardiometabolically unhealthy. Researchers concluded that by using BMI categories as the main indicator of health, an estimated 678 million US adults are misclassified as cardiometabolically unhealthy or cardiometabolically healthy. Something is wrong with BMI. Why are we still using BMI as a measure of health? I believe not only is BMI outdated, unreliable, but I truly also believe that it is damaging to our health. Doctors use it to diagnose otherwise healthy individuals as unhealthy, classified on their BMI, and then use this information to prescribe weight loss in the pursuit of supposed health. Earlier in the week, I sat down with my friend Nicola to ask her about her experiences as being diagnosed as unhealthy due to her BMI at a young age, and how this affected her for the rest of her life.
I've recently lost a lot of weight. I was like 55 kilos heavier than I am right now. So I was genuinely a bigger girl. So we had like the child health nurse come to the school, and they took our weight and our height, And then a note was written for my mum to either, I think she had to come in and they wanted to talk to her, and they basically said, your child is overweight and you need to watch her food.
Now, looking back now, were you an overweight child?
No, and my mum, even looking at photos, I was like, today's standards, you wouldn't look at me and think she's an overweight child.
Yeah.
And even my mum said she was really shocked and like, what? When they called her in to say that, because I wasn't, at that point, I was a normal, healthy child.
So your health was totally fine. It was just based on the fact that your BMI was overweight, that it was recommended for you to go on a diet.
Yeah, I had no other health concerns. I was a healthy, active 4 or 5 year old child. There was no diabetes, there was no disease, nothing.
What happened after that? What impact did that have on your life?
Pretty bad. Because then my mum started restricting my food. Even though mum knew in her heart of hearts that I was fine, obviously the doctors put that doubt in her mind, and so she wanted to do the right thing by me. So at no point do I blame my mum for doing anything, because she, as all mothers do, did what she thought was the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
But it really wasn't the right thing to do, and it set me up for a life of eating disorders and like really bad relationship with food and weight and body image and everything. It was terrible. It was the worst thing that could have happened. It felt like a restriction of love to me. Like, it was really deep emotional trauma connected with food, and I still haven't got over it, and I'm 30 now. So it was horrible. And from then on, I was a binge eater, or I was restricting food to the point of not eating. And I would never have been able to be called anorexic, because even though I would have had the diet of someone who's anorexic, if they had never done my BMI, they would have never told my mum to put me on a diet. And I would say my life would be really different now, because I wouldn't have these hang-ups with food, unless of course someone else told her to put me on a diet, or something else happened. But it was the fact that I was made to go on a diet based on my BMI that has completely ruined my relationship with food, my mental health, and my body.
The core problem is that we as a society, we do equate thinness with health, and the harm and damage this belief causes is just indisputable. All of this adds to the support that BMI cannot determine our health, and that health doesn't have one look. Health cannot be seen, and health is different for all bodies. I do want to add that health is not a means to be valued, to be respected, to be loved, to be treated with kindness, to have access to medical care. I feel like people constantly have to prove their health in order to demand those things. You don't need to be healthy to be respected and valued as a human being. Where to now that we are aware of this information? Because it can seem a bit daunting, like, yeah, everything's good luck, have fun. I thought Fat Politics did a really good way of providing some actionable points. So I just want to read them out to you. Instead of convening task forces to try to figure out how to combat obesity, state and federal governments should be telling health agencies to find a better measurement of health than weight. They should make rules on the conflicts of interest between obesity researchers, weight loss doctors, and the diet and pharma industries. And they should develop programs to combat the stigma and prejudice that fat people face, and institute laws that protect people against size discrimination. In short, these agencies should be working on changing all the harmful perceptions we have about weight. And you might not be part of a government agency, you might not be on the NIH advisory board, but there's something we can all do as individuals to speak up and speak out. It might be having conversations with your friends. It might be posting about it on Instagram or creating a YouTube video. Whatever you can do to spread the message that the way that the obesity epidemic is being tackled right now is wrong, and that health cannot be equated with your weight. But I hope you really enjoyed this video. I know it was a long one, so if you watched the whole thing, thank you. And I will catch you next time with more good stuff. Thanks for watching. Bye.